to go ahead and meet in February, just because last year we had a lot of discussion around, we know that we've had increases in the amount of funding coming in and looking at that, how much debt service, all of that. And it seemed like it'd be really good to have this conversation early on, because we've had one way of doing this since the inception of this fund. And it seemed like a good time to really assess and make sure that this is the best way to move forward, because we have to think about the school capital commission and our partners, as well as just the overall debt financing with the county as well. And so I asked our finance department if they would just really dig in, do some research, and come back, educate us, and provide us with some options so that we can have a good, thorough discussion. And obviously, we wanted our school partners to be here with us, to be part of that discussion as well. And that way, whatever we decide today, everybody knows going forward, and we can all be on the same page with that. So thank you all for being willing to be here. And then we'll be excited to hear about some of the projects that are getting closed out. I've just been around in some of the schools and was able to see some of those projects firsthand, and definitely our school staff are very appreciative of those upgrades to the schools, and so we appreciate everyone's good work with that. So with that, we will look at our agenda, and do we have a motion to follow the agenda as presented?
So moved. Second. Commissioner Wells, we called the meeting to order.
Oh, sorry.
All good.
Yes.
There's a lawyer in the room. So.
The meeting is called to order. I need to say those specific words.
Pretty close.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we had a motion and a second to follow the agenda as presented. All in favor? Aye. Okay, the ayes have it there. And you have the October 9th regular meeting minutes. If you've had a chance to look over those, I'll entertain a motion to approve that if you don't see anything that needs to be corrected.
Move to approve as presented.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you. And do we have anyone here for public comment? Okay, hearing none, we will move on and we will begin with our finance.
Great. So first up, we have an update on sales tax revenues. What we're projecting for fiscal year 2024 is $28.9 million for the year, and that's a 2% growth rate. So we are seeing a little bit of a slowdown in sales tax revenues, and there's been some conversations about what to expect for FY 2025 from other analysts. They're looking at around 2 to 5% growth. So a little bit lower going forward, but that's kind of what we can expect for sales tax at this point. Any questions? Next, we have the list of projects ready to close as certified by the schools. We have 3 from Asheville City Schools and 3 from Buncombe County Schools, with a total of $502,000 of savings being reverted back to the fund. Mainly from the Montford retaining wall repairs. We had planned to repair the entire wall, but Montford Historic District wanted just the portion that needed to be repaired to be done instead of the entire wall. So that's where we're seeing those savings from.
It's good to see that done, because that was being talked about before I even started on this school capital commission. So it's nice to see that that's completed.
Okay, now we're going to move into a discussion regarding how we funded projects in the past and walk through a few different scenarios of how we can fund projects going forward to create a more sustainable and forward-thinking strategy. So as we can see, historically, we have debt financed 100% of our projects. There's not really been a cap as to how much of funding we approve. We've always done analysis to determine whether or not the projects brought to this commission are something that we can afford. And as you can see, this is getting quite expensive with the interest on that debt that we're issuing. Here we see interest remaining of nearly $40 million, and if we think about the projects that we approved just this past cycle, that was $40 million. So that is quite a bit of money that's going towards interest that's not being able to pay for our projects. So you have a couple different scenarios to walk through of how we can modify this strategy. The first scenario is continuing to do 100% debt financing, but creating a project approval amount cap. In this scenario, this is using 55% of estimated revenues. So that's $15.6 million of projects that can be approved every cycle. And as you can see, this makes a much more affordable interest at $6.5 million that would be tacked on to our debt service every cycle. Taking this route really sets us up for our future selves and ensuring that we're not reaching capacity or getting to a point in time where we're not able to fund as much as we have done historically.
And before you go on, can you speak more to why you came up with the 55%, the 15.6 million?
Yeah, of
Speak to
course.
that, please.
So the estimated coupon rate is 4%, and that equates to about 42% of principal going towards interest. That gets us close to 100%. So that's where that 55% revenues figure comes from.
So does that mean that if scenario one was how we chose to move forward, over the years as the interest that's been accruing over the so many years begins to go down, could that percentage begin to go up, or would we just lock in at that 55?
It certainly could change, and this is based on estimated revenues and using an assumption of 0% sales tax growth rates. We would see that number continue to change throughout the years, assuming that there's going to be a 2% or always a positive growth in sales tax revenues. This is just a conservative estimation of what this would look like.
So with this scenario, basically 55% of whatever those revenues are, and you're recommending that because of the amount that goes to the interest and being able to keep the interest set at a more sustainable level there over the long term.
Absolutely, yeah, that's correct.
Is that still utilizing long-term debt or shorter-term debt?
This is still long-term debt, so we'd be looking at around a 15 to 20-year debt issuance.
Everybody speak up though. We want this, no one's taking any action today, so we want to have a conversation about this. So please ask as many questions as you got. Nothing silly and nothing's too complex.
So Paige, you said cycle, and just so we're clear, cycle is annual, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Is there a reason you might not have looked at shorter-term debt to generate the interest savings?
LGC, so the kind of the overarching power that is of North Carolina, they really like us to issue 20-year debt. We've skated by sometimes 15-year debt. And then we try to match the useful life of the projects that we're financing with the debt issuance if we can.
Thanks. That's a little different than South Carolina.
Yeah, no, it's so LGC is the local government commission. They are, anytime we issue debt, we have to go through their body for approval, essentially. And they have very key markers that we all have to match, so.
There's a long.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a long list. It's a little wild, actually.
These are great questions. Does anyone else?
I'm assuming you're gonna get to another scenario, so I'm not gonna. 100% debt worries me always, because you don't wanna manage or financially build yourself into 100% debt financing 20 years, and you never know what the interest rates are really gonna end up turning out to be, that you're gonna lock yourself into this scenario. I have concern.
Yeah, and the thing is, we're not gonna use the word lock anymore, so we're never, we meet every year. Paige and our team, we're always looking at finances constantly. So what this is just presenting options on how we'd be more sustainable going in the future. And it's basically walking through. So on this slide, this would be from an affordability standpoint, obviously, if you don't pay for the full price of something, you spread it out over the cost of years, you can do more. But the trade-off, as Paige said, $15 million in debt isn't a true $15 million for projects. You're spending money on interest, and that's. But also, the county's very healthy. We got a great bond rating. We get cheap debt mostly, but we've recognized, so we've done a lot. You all know we've done a lot with this current strategy that we have, done a lot of projects over the last 5 years, right? So, but we're with you too. Yeah, we agree with you.
And I see that, I see that we still have 40 million to pay off.
Yep.
In interest on our current.
Which is okay. It is okay.
Which, well, why don't we go with the other, because I think.
We did a lot with it, right?
We have three
So-
scenarios, so we'll go through all those, and then I'm sure we can have a very robust discussion around that.
All right, great. Let's take a look at the next scenario, which is 100% pay-go. So we would be paying for all of our approved funding with cash. There's quite a few benefits to this strategy. One being that we'd obviously be saving on that cost of capital that we keep referring to. Another is that we could invest any earmarked cash that we have put towards projects into securities with maturity dates that align with when we're expecting to spend on our projects. So we'll be able to earn some interest there, bring that back to the fund or put it towards other projects. The only limitation with this is because of the rate that we have debt service right now, we're limited to how much we're able to pay go at this time. So that's kind of the trade-off here. We're having that savings, but there's a limitation, especially in the beginning, of how much cash that we have available to put towards projects. But as we go year over year, we see that debt service decrease and we see the amount that we're able to pay go increase. We look maybe, I know this is a long way in advance, but 10 years or so, we'd be able to cash fund $20 million worth of projects every cycle. So that's a big difference from the last scenario where we were showing just 15.6 and project approval every cycle, get an extra 5 million or so. And that's not including any growth in sales tax.
Okay, you're saying so it's gonna take a little while to get to that. Where would we be? Let's just say that we went with this one. What would we be able to do over the next few years?
Assuming that there's no other debt issuance, it's around 6 to 7 million for each cycle for 10 years or so.
Oh,
And that's our
10
secret.
years.
So then that second bullet isn't quite accurate, current cash available.
It is accurate, it's just, we also have debt service that we have to pay for coming up in June, May, so.
It's also, it's very point in time. So like that's, and we recognize we're having this conversation way ahead of any funding decisions. We will already have this conversation when we have a funding decision to make, but
yeah.
That, great question, George. This is a point in time cash. We just looked at the bank, so.
So basically, we'd be doing about 6 to 7 million a year for the next 10 years if we went with this scenario. Is that what I heard you just say?
Yes, and I think that, the projects that we just approved have not been, we haven't issued debt for those yet, so that's not factored into this scenario.
Any other questions about this scenario?
Just a comment.
Yeah, or comments?
With this scenario, knowing what we have on our plate with some really detrimental projects, I feel like we're gonna have to go with some kind of a mixed scenario, but just knowing what's on our plate with, our projects that we know that's on the list that we have to get to, that's gonna be an issue for us.
Tina, are you reading ahead? You trying to be one step ahead?
Just offering a suggestion to this one.
Yeah, so we've seen two extremes, right? We've seen one extreme where you can fund a lot, but money isn't necessarily spent 100% on projects, or, it's to pay down the debt service. The other scenario is you've got less cash to play with because we're spending true dollars on true projects and not cost of capital, right? So any other thoughts before we hit another scenario that someone may have alluded to? No, it's good. Thanks for those comments, Sam.
All right, so the final scenario is that combination Tina was alluding to, kind of a Goldilocks scenario, if you will, where we really capitalize on the benefits of both of those different strategies. So we would finance our capital projects, any projects that have a useful life of 15 to 20 years where it makes sense to spread that cost over the life of the debt. And then for our smaller scale projects, we would pay-go those or maintenance, those things of that nature, to be able to benefit from both of those strategies. Again, there's that limitation, especially as we continue to issue debt, on how much we're gonna be able to pay-go. In this scenario, is my number's coming in around 3 million to be able to pay-go for like about maybe the 10 years as well.
What would it be for the whole budget part? You're not saying like 3 million only.
No, that's just the pay-go, yeah.
So interesting for debt too. So you're assuming some debt, we're assuming some major debt projects in that right page, like
Yeah, I was looking
30
at
million,
around
50 million.
8 million a cycle. To have a good balance between what we're able to pay-go and what we're able to debt finance.
This is what we agree on.
So the
That's what
8
we-
million was, the 3 million was for the pay-go,
Yep.
and the 8 million,
Would be what we're debt financing.
Is there like a percentage on that, like there was with like scenario one, is that roughly a blah percent? Where did you come up with 8 million?
That was just to give,
Like what
As I
kind of
was-
cushion is that leaving?
I was looking at what our ending balance was and how we could do kind of an equal split. So it was just kind of an analysis based on how much would we be financing, so that 8 million, and then 3 million in the pay-go, to kind of make sure that we're spreading it across and having a similar amount that we can fund each cycle.
So in scenario one, roughly 45% was being held back, right? So I guess what I'm asking in scenario 3, roughly what's the holdback? Is that an answerable question? Maybe it's not.
Let's take it from the approach of, we know how much cash we had to pay-go. So like from the scenario two, if we had a number, whatever your number was for pay-go, we're not necessarily saying $8 million in project. We're saying we have this much capacity every year to pay some debt service and then some cash flow. So we can give you a number right now, but it's not gonna stick by the time we actually do any of this,
Right.
right? So,
Well, I think with all of these ultimately, like,
yeah, it's all
they can be
fun.
tweaked, they can
Yeah,
all be tweaked. I guess I just,
But what the commitment is we really sharpen our pencils every year and say, look, we think these meet a set criteria of, like, maybe it's a new building, that makes sense for debt, right? And then maybe we've got,
but we're not gonna be able to do, I mean, like, what would the new build, I guess that's my thought process too, like, if it were something like that, would that be like $8 million?
so what we're gonna do is we're gonna come and say, no, it's, think about it, don't think about the project cost, like, no, I'm not saying $8 million total. I'm saying $8 million, and so when we pay the debt service down every year, or when you pay your loan down every year, we call it debt service.
Okay,
So we would have capacity every year, let's say, just round numbers, $10 million.
okay,
We would say $20 million building split over 20 years equals this amount that comes out of the pot. So
okay,
it's a little, it's,
The
okay.
amortization is applied to the availability.
yes, yeah. So what we do every year is Paige and I have forecasts that go out X amount of years. And we see year one, we have 10 million, year two, we have, based on whatever, let's just say 10 million. How much of that do we want to use to pay down debt service? Not
Okay.
necessarily debt finance a whole, like, we're gonna debt finance the whole project, but you're not spending,
I got you.
it's just a portion of the project, right? 120th
Okay.
plus it's a good question though.
Okay.
I'm just curious, thinking back to some of the projects we've done, what would be some examples of when, if we went this route, that we'd use the pay-go? Thinking about just some of those projects we've done over the past couple of years.
Paving, chillers, fire alarms would be
Yeah.
paved
Yeah.
items. Your big W.D. Williams would be a loan, a debt. It would be based on that criteria, which would really help guide.
So all this to say, really, the full approach either way, we don't think is the way to go, right? So when we give you future recommendations, we're gonna have some sort of hybrid. Where we look at, are we maximizing the, you heard us say in the past, you may have heard us say in the past, leveraging the sales tax dollars. Well, we've done that. Now we wanna leverage, we wanna try to get out of that interest payment. You know, we want to really maximize the amount to get that $15 million to actually pay for $15 million of projects and not 12 or whatever. So
As we're planning for projects moving forward, let's just say we choose at some point scenario 3. In your mind, is there a dollar figure that pushes it into a debt finance versus pay-go, or is it simply the 15 to 20-year lifespan? And the reason I say that, like as we're planning projects and we've got a chiller, do we indicate, okay, we want this to be a pay-go project, but then we've got this building renovation that it could be the same cost, but you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
How would y'all recommend we plan that as we move forward and present that to this group?
So I see an ideal situation looking like this. Me and Paige run some numbers. We come in and say X amount is what you have to work with. Let's do some work in here. Let's really figure out how to make it work. I mean, it's all hypothetical right now. Anything I throw out's not gonna stick. So, but that's what's gonna happen. There's gonna be guardrails going forward. Even though we could have afforded $40 million in debt like we did this last cycle, not necessarily the trajectory we need to stay on perhaps.
So one way you can think about it is when you're looking at a whole project list of whether or not that's appropriate for debt financing versus appropriate to cash fund. You think about if you're debt funding it, we're paying for that for the next 20 years. Where is that project improvement gonna be in 20 years? Is it still going to have like good useful life, like good bones in it, right? You don't wanna be paying for something that you're already having to replace again, right? It's still on the books to be paid for, right? So in some of the projects, that's why we kind of think of the easier scenarios, like a new building. Yeah, hopefully that building is still strong and going well into the 20, 30, 40, I don't know how long the building will last, but more than what your chiller would, right?
For sure.
So that's where you kind of think also, like you said, the example of those 2 scenarios and with the same dollar amount. So yeah, sometimes you can use a dollar amount, but really when it gets into like useful life, you're not gonna wanna pay and debt fund that for 2 decades. Because you've got your taxpayers, which as it's sales tax, it's a little bit different than passing on like a certain tax rate from property tax, but it's the same kind of concept. Right? You don't want to be paying on that cost of capital, that interest and stuff to carry it on your books when the project's already being replaced or rebuilt or something, so.
I'd love to think about the, if I can, kind of silo each of us for a moment, but think about where the onus lies. So let's say that we are looking at something like a scenario 3. And let's say that I'm making this totally hypothetical and simplifying this completely. Let's say Buncombe County comes and says, we need to replace a chiller, and then we need to do this big remodel. And Nashville City comes and says, we need to add on an addition, and then we've got to do some HVAC stuff, right? The onus of how those things get funded, does that fall on the folks presenting saying this is how we think you should fund it? Does it fall on this commission to say this is how it gets funded? Or does it fall on y'all to say, you tell us what you want to do and we figure out how to fund it? Is that?
I highly recommend you all lean on us to figure out how we're going to fund something, and we will come to you with an informed number.
Okay.
And then you all, you're doing your magic where you're prioritizing the lists that you have based on a certain set of criteria. Then we take that full conversation, kind of meld those ideas together, and you all do the magic that you do. It's been easy in the past because we've just said we can afford this debt service.
Yeah.
And we can, I mean, we still can, right? But we're gonna have to start thinking a little harder about it. So.
May I ask, is there a thought that there would be a percentage benchmark by the commission to say 20% this year is pay-go or every year is pay-go, or is it going to be a year-to-year decision on the part of the commission based on the advice from the finance team?
It's interesting because think about it in 2 different ways. Think about it from a capital improvement projects list, like a CIP is what we call it, right? Multiple projects going down the list, is it a percentage of that? That's harder than saying a percentage of the amount of available funding in a year. So I think I would rather lean towards, correct me if you feel differently, Melissa, Paige. I would rather be, maybe we have a target, but it's gonna change, right? You're gonna have so many different projects that cost so much more money than other projects every year.
You're
Yeah.
answering the way I want you to answer, man. I just.
I'm just kind of, I'm going around like this, right? So we have metrics that exist now, right? Like we try to track a certain percentage of funded CIP, but it just fluctuates so much. It's not a very useful measure, right?
So Matt, like, they're gonna do what they've always done, right?
Absolutely.
They're still gonna prioritize just like you always have.
Yes.
And it's just that then we're gonna have to take a finer look at that and then go down that list and say, we have this amount for those long-term debt financing and we have this amount and we can go down the list of the pay-as-you-go.
It'll make you argue big salary.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we
That's a
can,
much better way to ask it.
if we come to you and say $10 million, what we would do is we would have already had the list, and then we stay in communications with the schools. We would do what we think, okay, we think this feels like it would be a debt-funded project. It says $20 million, but it's actually $1 million over 20 years, so we could plug that project in, right? And then it wouldn't necessarily have to be like horribly detrimental, but I'm just saying, I think the process can work if we let it work. So it's kind of hard to see right now. We're just trying to give you concepts and ideas. But when we get into the next funding cycle, we're going to have this kind of foundation right now that we're talking about. And then we're going to reintroduce it again. And George, I really like your comment about what are expectations from everyone. So we'll crunch the numbers. They'll prioritize the projects. We will stay in communication with the school systems. By the time we get here, you all do what you need to do. And we'll try to inform your decisions the best that we can. That's all. And we'll say we could cash fund this project, or we could debt fund this one project and give us a little bit more capacity to fund something else on the list.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the mix, right?
And I think a further conversation on your point is, for us, planning, you having this conversation now, so when we prioritize that list, we know it's $10 million-ish
Yeah.
each year, or it's, because if there's obviously the endless list that there is, if something's really critical 5 or 6 steps down, but we know that money won't be available, we may have to actually move that, even though there might be a project we might prefer to address first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's already, you know, we're having this conversation relative to the climate for this commission. It's sales tax driven, believe it or not. Sales tax is 3 months behind, so we're still trying to figure out what this year's doing, right? So it's a little early to start giving out projections, right? Like we're giving you some hypothetical numbers, but
Well, even if it was ranges, just for long-term planning, so we can
yeah.
start blocking that out.
We keep models in-house upstairs, and we'll absolutely share to help you with your planning processes.
So even like if you estimated that we had no growth based on what we did last year, right?
Yes.
And you come up with a model, you can kind of project
Yes,
for them, right?
absolutely. Yeah, and we have numbers right now. I just don't want to give them to you because I think it's too early in the year. But we do need to figure out what a sweet spot is for you all to figure out when that conversation needs to happen. I mean, I want this to, we all want this to run as smooth as possible. So.
One thing that funds can do to ensure that there is a source for cash funding the following year is whatever your estimate is, and it could be 0% growth, and that's what y'all fixed your project funding on, that anything over that can be to address anything that becomes a super high priority because unexpected, or that could be kind of your jump off point for the following year to cash fund. And so that can sort of be the boundary of how, like, if you achieve growth year over year, that goes into your cash fund. That's just a scenario.
And I'm just curious, while we're on this topic, looking at how much we're paying in interest, is there any way we can work on getting that down some, or we go ahead and pay some off early and reduce some of that?
Well, yeah, I mean,
But it's gonna, then.
but you need to remember, so, and this is a conversation we've had before, the Article 39 sales tax is the only piece of funding that pays
Right.
debt service in the school capital fund commission. And likewise, it does not pay any general fund projects or vice versa. It's only that. So if you're
Right.
taking it out of the pot early,
Mhm.
you just gotta remember it's all the same. You're pulling your dollar bills out of your wallet, you're either paying the interest early or you're
Right.
paying, they may need the projects now versus the future interest savings. But we do refunding quite regularly, right? So that's when the markets agree with some gods above and they give us better interest rates. So that's a very clean way of getting some savings with interest. Yeah.
Okay.
Which we are pretty on the ball about.
Yeah, thanks for that reminder.
And we do look for those opportunities if should we have excess capital, which I don't know many governments that truly have excess capital, but opportunities that, it's past the call date, so you could defease the debt paid off early, and how much would that save versus what opportunities you have or needs for that cash? It's like, is it the quality of life or the health of the fund, right? So constantly look at those and discuss those with our financial advisors as well.
I think Ronnie would agree too, that the way we've been doing these projects last few years and having to phase to stay within a certain amount of money, it's super complicated, super aggravating, and possibly more expensive because I'm bringing you on as a contractor and I can't give you, if you get the whole project, you've got the whole project. I think it's just easier to deal with it. You agree with that?
Yeah.
So I think being able to debt finance some of some of these larger projects, maybe a bigger amount of money, but I think that would help out tremendously.
And ultimately, that's why we've kind of packaged the city schools projects the way we have with like Hall Fletcher renovations. We're going in one time, one mobilization, that sort of thing. But it creates a big project. You folks look at a $6 million renovation, my goodness, but you take care of a lot of things at one time. And when you do have to start breaking those up into smaller pieces, like it just costs more money.
Not only does it cost more money, like we did with Hawk Creek, we phased it, it caused other issues, whether, the students are involved during that day and it went on for more than a year, and it really caused issues. And so trying to be able to get it more on a timely basis and not phase it.
Yeah, and just full disclosure, so changes are coming, right? That's the gist of this conversation. I remember when I joined the School Capital Fund Commission to support for you all, I remember looking at the finances and being like, maybe we're not giving enough. So now, now I feel like we've definitely done a lot of, we've done a lot of good over the last few years. So just know it's gonna be a little tighter, but in the long run, we're gonna spend more money on actual projects, right? We will still debt finance some things, but this will become more clear as we go through a cycle. So
I have a question for, and this is, you might not be able to answer, Nashville, but thinking about traditionally when we met, how we met, do we need to I can't tell if this means a lot more work for y'all in preparation, but would we need to meet earlier in this cycle?
So sorry to cut you off, George. We want to meet in March to discuss how we go forward with adopting the budget, not in November, but in July with the rest of the county.
Okay.
And I think what that's going to mean is we're going to have to change our bylaws to change the meeting cycle to, and don't let me say it incorrectly, but to hit bid estimates the way they need to hit for when the budget actually comes online, you can do what you need to do. So we've got to figure out, not only are we tackling how to fund hundreds of millions of dollars of CIP, now we're trying to figure out how we're all going to successfully execute a change in process completely, right? So we know now we adopt the budget in November, so you all can have the summertime to get your, get the ground broken, if you will. Which we are going to have to change the meeting schedule. And they are more informed on it. And I think we use the March meeting, if we can, to devote a whole discussion to how we can successfully implement a change like that.
And I'll say for us, and I don't want to speak for the county schools at all, but for us, getting the money, it's approved in November. We see it workday, November, December timeframe. By the time we get a design team on board and get that design, there's no way we're turning wrenches in July anyway when the school gets out. So it just delays that part. You guys are like, why have we not spent money yet? I'm still in school, I'm waiting an entire another school year to get in there. So I think getting in July would probably speed that up somewhat, where we've got a year to design, bid, and be ready to go the next summer break, if that makes sense. For me, I don't know what Clark's been.
Yeah, it's always, it depends on the project, how that works, but it's trying to do major construction during school time is always difficult. So it's, and unfortunately, the contractor market in West North Carolina is not strong enough sometimes to handle it. If they're doing a big project, we're doing a big project, it's hard to get that much labor force to handle the kind of work.
And are we gonna be able to hit it like this July and not skip another whole session?
So we gotta figure out.
Or
I think that's the hard
some of those
Yeah.
paving, painting, roofing kind of things up front that can be easily contracted and then push the bigger project and get into that. Once we get into the cycle,
Once we
we
do it
find
1 year out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Through
Yeah.
that whole cycle will be fine, just getting to that point of, through that rotation.
Well, we've set ourselves up for some projects that we're dependent on that next group, that next funding cycle to keep a phased renovation moving. Let's think through that.
And we've already started the conversation from the county's perspective. So interest rates are so good on the end of us and doing investments right now that we've really tried to tackle when the inflows and outflows of actual cash happen. So we've had good conversations with the schools about let's be better partners, communicating, those types of things. So it's all lending itself to each other. But yeah, that's the magic question. Do we do one before? No one wants to wait, right? But we have to figure something out knowing that the Board of Commissioners adopts a budget in the June for July 1. So that'll be the fun discussion for next month.
Any other questions, comments on this topic? Okay. Anything else from you all on this around finance?
I guess the only other thing is we're on track to issue debt in May for projects from a couple of years ago. We'll keep you updated on that though. So going to market in May.
Well, thank you all. This very good discussion, and I'm sure it will be a robust discussion with all this information for next month as well. Trying to figure out how to make that work. I think it's gonna be good changes overall, and it's just gonna take some work to get through this cycle to get it all working smoothly. It's definitely glad you all were able to be here and be part of this conversation, so we can all move forward together with that. I think we've got project updates now.
You could run this,
I'll
just
mess
scroll.
it up. I'll mess it up
Just
every
scroll.
time.
You got it.
Just don't show too much confidence. But don't push up. Hey, look at that.
Hey, so far so good.
Okay, yeah, so, just a real quick update on what, some of the things that myself and Asheville City Schools folks has been working on. And I hate that Tim and Tim couldn't make it today because they've been obviously very integral to all of these things happening. I lean on those folks a lot. City Schools is lucky to have both of those gentlemen, but, folks know what these projects are, but there's a quick list of the current projects that we're working on that are active also. And we'll just go through each of those as we move down. All Fletcher renovations was funded in the last cycle. So we have requests for qualifications out for both construction manager at risk and design firms. I had our pre-application meeting for the construction manager at risk, and those statements of qualifications are due back February 19th. Design is also due back February 19th. So once we get all of those statements in, we'll form our scoring committee, be it probably myself and then Asheville City Schools, Tim and anyone else they would like to take a look at those, get those scored, get those contracts awarded, and get underway with those. See now I rolled it and it didn't do anything. It's gonna go like 2 here in a minute, I know. There we go. So Asheville Middle School track kind of in the same phase with one exception. I know the City of Asheville's Parks and Rec had worked on that project a little bit early on. I've talked with Allison Danes, our Recreation Services Director, used to be at the City of Asheville, so I've kind of leaned on her a little to try to get some of that information. Having a little bit of hard time getting everything we would need to get under contract with the design firm that worked on that the first time. And if I can't, we'll just have to release a request for qualifications pursuant to general statute and select the design team to get on board with that. I've not gotten everything by the end of this week. I've already got the RFQ written. I'm just going to release it, start kind of fresh with it. So that's where we are with that one. I think we can still get that in and design in time to be working on that this summer. Asheville High Water and Sewer, this is one that has been on here for a while, and It's definitely a very complicated, project to say the least. We've done a lot of investigative work that's now finally complete, and, all of our design documents are being finalized. We have a due date on them of March the 8th, and then our, construction manager at risk firm is hoping to get that out for bid, mid-March, and get those bids back in April. Now to let us start work on this summer as well. And then some of that work will have to take place during the school year, and we'll just have to see if we can sweet talk the principal and phasing that. With some, encouragement from a member of this board. That's our hope. But the investigative work on that, it took a while, but we wanted to make sure that we weren't going in and destroying 100-year-old floors in a high school building to replace a sewer pipe that didn't need it. That was my biggest fear from the beginning. We have found a few areas where there's pipe degradation or bellies in the sewer pipes. Those have to be addressed. The majority of that one will be pressurized water lines and then bathroom upgrades. I'll say a lot of those restrooms in that building are original to high school, and they're in desperate need of a facelift, to say the least, while still preserving some of that historic elements, marble bathroom partitions. Asphalt Arts Building, we ran those in conjunction, those two projects. We've done a lot of investigative work there as well. Went into one of the mechanical rooms where it was easy to strip off the insulation to all the chill water piping to try to get a better idea of the condition of it. It looked terrible, which you'll see in the pictures next. What we did was we actually made some holes in the pipe where we could really see a good cross section of that pipe and determined that it just looks a lot worse than it is. So we were able to clean that pipe in the mechanical room up, paint the piping and re-insulate. And then as we move into the summer, get the drawings finalized, we'll be replacing pumps and that sort of thing, but we won't have to replace all of that piping in the boiler room. So that was a good find. And really the reason why we do a lot of that preliminary work is just for things like that. So we hopefully realize savings and we're not just fixing things that don't need to be fixed. These are really hard to see. And I said last meeting I was not going to put any of these tiny pictures on here again, but obviously I did.
I'm just disappointed these are the only pictures you provided.
Yeah, you want to just scroll through there? There's a bunch of them on there. The picture on the left there is rusty, terrible looking piping. And then the picture on the right is the same piping from a slightly different angle because the room was full of insulation that day and I couldn't get to the same angle, but painted and ready to re-insulate. So you can see those in pictures where you can zoom in. There's a big, huge difference in that. We're hoping as we move into the building, we find more of that, but I'm not super confident that that'll be the case as we get into the Asphalt High Auditorium. So the construction contract was approved by the Board of Commissioners on February 6th. We were able to pick up several alternates that were on that bid, including the balcony scope, owner preferred seating, and a new stage curtain versus cleaning up the old one, which I was super thankful of because I have a feeling like it's going to fall apart when we take it down. Work is scheduled to begin on March the 4th there with an expected completion date of October this year. Unless the band is in there on the 5th and then we may have to wait till the 6th. Varsity Gym, that construction contract was approved back in June of last year by the Board of Commissioners due to long lead times for bleachers and the fact that there is always someone shooting basketball in that gym. We will be starting work in March as well there. And a lot of that had to do with just the timing of the contractors. It's the same construction manager at risk firm, so they could bid that, have the same subs and that sort of thing. One mobilization, kind of like we were talking about earlier. So we will be starting that project in March as well. Let's see, Lucy Herring renovations, that contract was approved November 21st of the Board of Commissioners. And then we're waiting on the summer months to really get started in procurement of the HVAC equipment that had ridiculously long lead times. That will be HVAC, piping and unit replacements, roof replacements, windows, gang toilet upgrades, and cooler freezer replacements. Work right now is scheduled to begin in June. And then we've worked with school admin to kind of phase that project in, getting certain sections of the building at certain times, kind of moving folks around, to be able to really work throughout the school year with hopefully what will be very little disruption. Total work for that is scheduled to complete summer of '25. And that's just where we have to really phase that HVAC work. Obviously, in the summertime, we can't be working on air conditioning, and spring, early fall, and then winter, can't take the heat down. So we have to just kind of phase those things to get in. So it will take a little while. The summer of 2025 work is really commissioning of the system, test and balance, final things like that. Then the security projects, with this round of funding, we're gonna do a lobby upfit as part of that Lucy Herring renovation, since we're in there destroying the building anyway, makes sense. And it'll make it a lot more cost effective to get that work done when those contractors are already on site. And I've got a tiny little picture of what the lobby will look like at Herring, where you can see that, I can barely see that little hand, but we'll create that kind of two-step entry system, like you folks have seen before from the TRC report, and make it a lot safer entrance to that school. Currently, when you walk in, you can just go in. Look, I skipped one. There we go. So, if you have any questions, I will be happy to attempt to answer them.
Thank you for those updates.
No.
Appreciate it.
You did such a good job, Ryan, just keep turning it on.
Keep blindfold on too, Ryan.
Because I think last time it was you.
It was me, don't wave it up to me. So, I just wonder if that will reach that far.
Yeah, you get
All right. So we'll go through our projects as well. This is our list of projects that basically are in some form of, towards the end of the project. We've got a couple in here that are getting started, but most of what you're going to see today are the ones that are getting close to completion. So going over our security assessment, y'all have seen this before. This is, kind of giving the history where we hired an independent consultant, both districts, to come up with our plans. And we're working on these priorities. And the biggest thing Buckley Head Schools is working on is getting our front office reconfigurations, and some of the situations you'll see, like in the picture with the gates, where we have multiple buildings that have kind of courtyard areas. So we're putting a big focus on controlling access to our buildings and intrusion prevention. This is, again, the prototype front office security, where you have 3 levels of vetting before you are set free into one of our buildings, and it seemed to work really well. We have 3 of those projects getting ready to start during spring break at 3 of our schools that were funded last semester. So we're trying to start them a little earlier so that we've determined it's easier to start during the middle of the school year than it is to try to get people trained or not be finished when school starts. That's painful when you're your first day of school and you're walking into construction areas. So we're going to have a construction area at the end of school where you're walking into a nice area with the first day of school.
Clark, I just want to say one of the things when I was going around to the schools, they are so proud of their new lobbies, the security, and the ones who don't have them yet, that was like the first thing they were mentioning to me.
Well, and I think that's one of our big focuses, because we have so many campuses. I mean, and some of these are very, they're very expensive projects to get them in this situation. Some of them are fairly cheap. So we're trying to spend quite a bit of money on those every year to get our 45 campuses equal, because they're not equal right now, and they know that, and they won't all be the same.
Yeah.
So this is the one we are working on finishing up at Pisgah. It's just showing some pictures of the front office. Some of the smaller schools are different as well. They don't have enough staff. So like this particular school has 1 office staff just because it's such a small school. So they have to be able to manage both windows. So if you come to Pisgah, you go talk to the same person that 2 drive-up windows, so, but it's working out well. At Reynolds, we have 3 projects we had going on there, the front office, and I'm spinning too fast. See if I can back up one without, yeah, Ronnie, you cursed me, brother. I'm going the wrong direction now. All right, I'm just gonna stop right there, so. Reynolds, we had the front office as well. Missed those pictures, but I'm sorry. And, we did our tennis courts, which turned out wonderful. They're, doing some final work there around the tennis courts, but they are actively, spring sports started last Friday. So it was just in time. That's a pretty neat system if you ever want to go out there. It's a post-tension slab. There's some unsuitable soils underneath that tennis court. When they built US 74, that's where a large area of the shot rock, when they built it, were buried in a big ravine right there, and it's just causing problems. But this post-tension slab will span those unsuitable soil areas, and that track or that tennis court should be there when we're all dead and gone. So it'll be nice. Also, the track Reynolds is really looking nice with their improvements. Old Middle, we've been doing several projects there. We've been doing some re-roofing. We built a new softball field.
Which they're very proud of.
You like?
They're very proud of that.
Oh yeah, that softball field is nice. It's probably one of the prettiest views from a softball field in Buncombe County. We didn't realize how pretty of an area that is until we started working up there. And then also, Buncombe Middle is one of our schools that had the gymnasium building was separate from the main building, so every day students would have to travel outside the building to get to the gym. So we have enclosed that corridor, making a safe passageway between the two. This is kind of where it's under construction, the corridor of the 2 buildings together. And I'm touching I just barely touched the thing.
Clark, we have an override button over here if you do.
That's good. I think you are touching it. I'm literally not even.
What are you doing over there? Just this is it? No, we're back.
I'm just getting close. Ronnie and I are better at things like shovels and
Yeah.
like touching anything that's moving. Anyway, there's a softball field that the school is very proud of, and it really kind of completes that campus as far as athletic facilities. It's pretty nice, or not pretty nice, real nice. Trying to turn really slow here. One time, okay. So there's some re-roofing. We a lot of our low slope to no slope roofs, we are working on a system where we frame and we create a sloped roof and put a metal roof on it. It's really worked well. In situations where we can, we are using that method that not only does it produce a roof that has a 70+ year lifespan, we've seen some energy savings as well due to the extra insulation that's added in the building. So it worked out really well. I think I turned it twice. Anyway, so Oakley, new metal roof on Oakley Elementary, a big portion of it. A portion of the roof was shingle roof, which is just not a good roof for a public building. So we've converted it to a metal roof, standing seam, and it also has a solar system attached to it. So one of the solar systems that was funded by the commission is actively on the roof. It's not been interconnected yet with Duke, but it is. As soon as it gets interconnected, it will be producing power that we are using there. Yes. You can see the 2 workers kind of in the skyline. They're actually installing the solar panels, but you can drive around that parking lot and see those very readily. It's a nice system.
Which ones have been interconnected with you?
Owen Middle has, North Windy Ridge has, Emma has, there's one other one, and I apologize, but I haven't. That's been a really long process. That it's been interesting to watch how long it takes for that interconnection to take place. But there's four of the systems are active, and you know, they're doing as designed, they're producing power. It's interesting we're still having some issues, Ronnie, you know, we've been working together on these. There's been some issues with the platforms that monitor them and getting onto their systems, but working to get those kinks out, that everything's complicated anymore. Yeah, Glenard is the other one. Yeah. So.
Well, thank you for that update.
Mhm.
And if there's anything we can do, I know Chair Bond, I'm sure you.
Yeah, they seem to be, you know, the actual construction, and Bonnie and I were talking about, really the only one left to construct is Irwin High, it's ground mount. Most of the other ones have been constructed. Is that finishing the do, and sometimes it takes 6 months to get everything connected. So it's a process.
Especially those larger ground mounts. I think anything over 250 kW requires a special device from Duke Energy. And I don't know that anybody knew that until like right there near the end. They're like, oh yeah, by the way, gotta have this. It's gonna be 6 months before we get those.
It's been an education process for all of us, I think, but it's, but they're moving along, and it's funny that, you know, the community, it's just like anything else. Some people really love them, and some people ask, you know, why do you put those here? So it's interesting to hear the feedback from individuals of solar.
The West Buncombe community did not like the ones at Irwin High when it snowed.
Was
Because
saying
the
that Glenwood.
sledding hill is gone now.
We have proven their sledding deal for sure.
Uh-oh.
So things you don't think about. Irwin High School, we did, going along with safety, we closed a set of stairwell that was just, or a stairwell that was wide open. That's just a security enclosure. It's kind of, it's not tempered space, it just prevents unauthorized entry. Then we also changed this large bank of windows in the media center, which we were very excited about, because every time it rained, the water would just come pouring through those windows. So that project really turned out nice.
Is this the only one, aren't there other ones?
There are some other steps throughout the building, but those are kind of in a hidden location that the school, Irwin High campus is under, you know, we're looking at that entire campus as far as helping with security, because it's a big sprawling out campus that's,
Naughty corners.
it actually was designed to change classes on the outside of the building. That's the way the building was designed. So, you know, over the years, we've moved things inside, but it doesn't work perfectly because we're not using it the way the building was designed. So yeah, we have plenty of projects to do.
Yeah, okay, I was just curious.
Avery Creek re-roofing project. This is phase 3 of 4, and we're asking, you know, we are beginning our capital outlay process, and a lot of times roofing, for example, we'll fund a considerable amount of roofing through our capital process, and then bring even the remaining of the larger projects to this committee. So we have, I think there's 1,400 roof areas in Buncombe County Schools, and a roof area is where it changes elevation. It's, we hired a company to assess our roofs, and we've got a lot of roofing we need to do. And our roofing, we can't spend enough money on roofing. TC Robertson, more roofing, that building just keeps on going. If you've ever been to TC Robertson, it's the original portion was built in 65, and I think every year from there to now, we built something else at TC Robertson. It's just like little chunks of, it just keeps going. So got plenty of opportunity for roofing work at TC.
And the reason that we're not, like doing the slanted roofing on those is just because of
Well,
how
some buildings,
spaced out the chunks are.
well,
as far
like
as
TC is such a wide building, it's hard, you couldn't get, most of those are working well in our buildings that have a traditional hallway, classroom on the sides, you can span that roof structure. TC is just such a massive building, it's really won't work on that building. Some of our paving projects, are Emma and Fairview. Fairview, we did through this committee as well, also did a new traffic queuing pattern, which probably had more positive reviews from that community than anything we've done. Because it was dangerous. I mean, every day cars were sitting still on Highway 74, which is a death trap. That's just cars drive too fast up there anyway. So this has gotten everyone off the road. It's worked really well. Emma, we plan on finishing the campus at Emma this coming summer. You can see we've paved half of it. We'll pave the other half this coming summer. So HVAC system. So Valley Springs is a good example of where we used a combination of all budgets. We used ESSER money, we used this money, we used our 4042 money, and we used lottery money. And Tina hates me for trying to keep up with what's been spent where. But this building, along with a lot of our buildings, our mechanical systems are getting old. And we totally redid all the mechanical systems in Valley Springs, and it's really made a big difference. These are just some pictures of that work. Fire alarm systems at Glen Arden is one we've done recently, and also the one at Pisgah. So we're replacing the fire alarms. It's, technology unfortunately changes so fast. It's just thinking of useful life. Some of our fire alarm systems are 15 years old, but they don't need to be. And usually what we do, or not usually, all the time, we will scavenge all the parts from Pisgah. When we put a new system in, we keep them so that we can keep our other systems running until we can get a new system going. So we do a lot of robbing Peter to pay Paul with parts. And there again, there are some of our solar projects in some form of stage of completion. The switchgear at Reynolds Middle, that's a big work that, as Ronnie can probably tell you, getting a switchgear now is at least a year out. And the concern we have, a lot of our switchgear equipment's over 50 years old, and should it fail, you won't be having school there. The switchgear is where the main power comes from Duke Energy into the building, and then it's separated out into different parts of the building. And used to that stuff was readily available. You could get it in days, but now it's years out. So what keeps you up at night? Things like this keep me up at night, because knowing I have to call Dr. Jackson and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to find a place to put kiddos at Reynolds Middle for the next year." That's stressful. So
I know you're stressing out.
Exactly. It's hard enough to take half a day off.
So that's,
Man, imagine those.
woo. Any questions? We'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you for these updates. One thing that I realized talking to my colleagues across the state is how fortunate we are to have this Article 39.
For sure.
Because there are many counties that have not been able to keep their schools as updated as we have. And I talked to some colleagues who are going to have just millions of deferred, and they're going to have to go out for bonds, right? Get the voters to approve bonds so that they can start doing what they need to do for their schools. And that was one thing when I was visiting the schools, they were so proud of how nice their schools are. And they said that when people come to visit, yes, for different athletic events or various things, and they mention how nice the schools are here. So we're fortunate that we have this dedicated funding source to be able to do this. So thank you all for the good work that you're doing. Or do any of the commission members have any other questions, comments? Okay, staff, do you have anything else that you need to share with us? Any of you have any other comments, questions?
What should we be prepared for in the March 11th meeting?
Great question.
So that's tomorrow.
Yeah.
Push-ups, like 3.
Let us think through that.
Do we get $1 million for each push-up? Is that what it
Oh, let that be true.
is? Yeah. I'll let Dr. Jackson.
We are beginning our capital outlay process March the 8th, and it takes us through the end of March, and then we have appeals the first week of April. So that throws another key into being able to be prepared to shift things with that March 11th date.
We're the cone, so let's just try to figure out the kinks.
And so just to amplify that a little bit, it's not that we can't get work done, it's that we have so many stakeholders who are involved in making those decisions about which of the schools is next on the list. And so to have principals and teachers and community members a part of that process just takes time. And so the schedule is pre-existing. So I don't want to send the message, we're saying it's hard work. We're saying that to be able to bring everybody in just takes time.
And so what is that,
We
give us
would,
that schedule again, please?
we would know this better by April the 10th. We would have our list, and we'd be able to help if we could shift it to this July.
I guess what's the planned result of the March meeting? Just to decide
Come up
what
with a
funding
plan.
method we're going to use only?
Not the funding method per se as much as the schedule of the process, yeah. So we've got to change some, we have to have a meetings, we need to change some bylaws. So the bylaws currently lock us into July, August, September, February, and March. So that's the actionable item that has to happen is changing those bylaws to be a little bit more flexible. We need to have something in March. It doesn't necessarily need to be, if we need to book a scheduled meeting out in like April or May, that's fine.
In your mind, when would we need to have our project list to you? If you were the king for that?
A month before anything's gonna happen with the commission.
So in late May, June?
And well, the beauty of this piece is, so you're kind of, you get a direct shot to the commissioners because we have this committee, right? So you don't have to go through the normal rigmarole that we have to do with the county. So I think anytime that we meet between now and May, we'll be fine. But this board needs to make an action before we can take it to the commission. So just remember that.
So, and let's just back it up a little bit. Your board has to be able to approve this at the commission, at the commissioner level, and adopt it with our June budget, right? And so we would need to back that up here and have approved it at this level in end of May.
And everyone gets their budget message typically mid-May. So that's the thing we need to consider. This is what I'd like, kind of like to chat through. Give me a little bit of time to think through a page.
We're tying all this to the other budgets. The other budgets we present May 6th to our board and May 10th or 12th, whatever day it falls on.
April sounds good to me. Keep it swinging.
So April would be coming to this, so in March, changing the bylaws only. April, we have a list of projects for you that we will fund.
It sounds like we're solving the problem. It sounds like we're doing it ahead of time instead of
Is there,
pushing back.
I'm sure there's a legal reason that why we can't just change his bylaws in this meeting.
We can absolutely change the bylaws this meeting, yeah, we can.
So
Yeah, we have to act on these, that's right.
You've got all members here, so I just pulled that up. All members here, you can add an item to the agenda. They can change it.
that way we don't have to have this meeting in March at all.
Although, so I hear you, Matt. One thing that I'm thinking about with this, with having to switch up the cycles, I'm not advocating for more meetings, but part of me thinks like it makes sense with the switch of cycles, this compressed timeline for us just to meet in March, April, it sounds like, right? But just kind of, because all of a sudden, we're not only looking at a new cycle, we're also looking at this possibility of different ways of funding, right? And so just, I want to, as a commissioner, kind of have space, if Putnam County National City need that space to kind of say, this is what we're thinking. Here's what, after the meeting in February, here's what's come up in further conversations with our staff. As opposed to not having something in March, we come into April with only that one meeting where everything needs to be set. So I just want to offer that up as a possibility.
So let me ask this. we could have that flexibility to meet even if we pass the bylaws. Let me just ask this, the bylaws, are we just going to, you're wanting to do them in a vague enough way that we can basically meet whenever?
Yeah.
Is that what you're going to do, or are you?
Looking at fruit, but that's what I wanna do. I wanna say we have regular scheduled meetings that will be decided X day or
You
X.
can always have a special meeting.
We can't have a special meeting, but I wanna lock in, I wanna take out this July, you know, I think it has like actual days, actual months in there.
Would it make sense to like have a proposed new bylaw for the next, like, maybe a proposed or recommended new bylaw that we can review before the next meeting instead of trying to do this on the fly right now? I don't know.
I think we need to have a meeting where we can actually talk about this.
Yeah.
Cause I think what we need to do is we need to look and see what our administrative constraints are for them, for you all, for us, so we can kind of map out all the different dates we need to figure out.
And I'd like to, so help me wrap my brain around this. So if we don't change the bylaws and bring to this committee our projects by April, have them approved by May, which would be ultimately approved by the county commission in June, then we would not receive funding until June of 25.
July,
July of 25. So we miss a full year's worth of funding, and I think, I know from our perspective.
This is what, unless we stayed on that October, November.
thing.
this is what we need to talk about. We need to figure out what we're doing. Are we funding two up front, or are we funding one behind? I mean, that's really where we're going with this, but we've gotta work with the cash flows in mind, that if we approve projects for 2 cycles, we need to make sure we're timing the projects out in a way where we're not spending the whole kitty.
And I know for Whatcom County schools, we have current projects that are banking on today, a December shot in the arm of money. So if we skip that, that's gonna cause problems.
I think what we're gonna have to do is pull it forward to us, so where you would get another funding. We're not committed to this, so please don't commit to this right now, but where you would get another funding issuance in this July. But you have to work with me and Paige and Melissa to make sure we have money to actually do this, because it's gonna be a heavy projection.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
This
it's-
first weird, awkward year, and then we'll be back on.
Yes.
Yeah, I would rather not penalize anybody and have to wait. That's really why I wanted to just devote a whole
maybe-
conversation.
Maybe if it's a really, a small funding cycle, just to keep those
Absolutely.
phased projects moving. Nothing new, basically.
So what would you need from me and Paige for this to be a successful meeting?
I mean, I almost feel like, like sometimes when we meet, Dr. Jackson brings like a proposal of what we should do. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's what we decide to do, but I think that you should do that in conversation with both finance departments of the school systems, and because I think you guys could know like what would be ideal for the bylaws better than us just like.
And don't get hung up on the boundaries. We're gonna
Well, yeah,
change
but I
one
also mean
sentence and
like
we're
this
gonna call it a day.
timeline right now.
Don't worry about that.
I think you
We
guys
won't put
need to
the-
be involved in
Right,
that
we won't put the
conversation
timeline.
too.
Yeah, we need to probably work on the calendar, the dates. I think,
The dates and
that's
just
what we really need to
suggestion.
figure out.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say, I think it's a great idea to take that hard coding out, so you're not locked into something, and
Yeah.
you can be flexible, but for us to see all that's been discussed as a calendar would be real helpful.
Yeah, we need to, because this is like a complete overhaul, right? So really wanted to, but if y'all are willing to do it, I think everybody show up in March. If that gives everybody time, we can really just have a hammer session of just figuring out. And we'll do it beforehand too, to have things for you to look at, right?
Yeah, ahead of time, we are already gonna be knowing our list of what we've got to bring to you, because we know our phases. And then we can look at the numbers, the dollars and then you guys can put together some proposals.
Well,
based
that
on-
won't happen until April though, right? That piece of it.
Well, we know
So you're
long
talking about for
range,
those ongoing.
we know long range
projects.
what
I got
we're looking for what we were looking for December, but we know those.
And maybe that helps make this year's part.
Yeah, because we can't skip a whole year, like we gotta bring it in and then move.
And I think that's where some of the came in too, right? That we wouldn't be skipping a year, that we could look also at some of the pay-go for those maintenance type projects. So
Unless I misunderstood.
No, let's practice what we
something,
preached a minute ago. Yeah, let's
Yeah, I
try
didn't
that.
hear that we were gonna wait a whole
Yeah.
year, we're just gonna look at it a little different.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
We're just changing the timeline a little bit, change is hard.
and asking you to make pretty big decisions in 2 cycles, or however this new cycle's gonna be, but I mean, we're definitely gonna be making 2 funding decisions in 1 cycle.
Well,
Yeah.
And from a county budgeting perspective, I understand, I think we do everything else in our June meeting for the budget, that we're gonna have some growing pains here, but I think because we've made some big changes in other subcommittees to get to that point, that it wasn't easy, but we did it, so
Yeah.
I appreciate that you're thinking about just doing this one time.
Keeping everything aligned and on the same calendar really helps us to be able to more efficiently manage cash investments, debt issuances. As the amount that we're funding continues to grow, it becomes a lot more important. Because like when we go out to issue debt, we're issuing debt for county projects, school projects, multiple funds all at the same time. And that's reimbursement to for stuff we've already, because we can't issue debt. So really working on this whole timing and kind of the shell game, if you will, but it all was kind of just cash management.
And we will have conversations with y'all and y'all prior to the March meeting, so we're a well-oiled machine by the time we get in here. It was a lot to introduce a new concept of funding side, and then to change the date all in one meeting, I thought that was just gonna be too much, so.
Thank you all very much for bringing this to us, and thank you all for being willing to work with us through this. It's gonna be beneficial going forward. We'll just work through it this year, but I think it'll be better for everybody going forward. Thank you all very much for bringing this to us and all the good information. We appreciate that. If there are no further questions or comments, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.